Hi everybody, my name's Sam. I'm one of the graduate students for Advanced Organizational Communication. Today I'm going to be giving a summary of Chapter 10 and one of the readings and outlining some possible connections between the two. There is nothing so constant as change. In today's climate, organizations that remain static will fail. Effective leadership is necessary to navigate the complexity of organizational change. This chapter considers processes of organizational change and the role of communication in these processes. Next, it covers planned versus unplanned change and looks at some models of how change occurs in organizations. Finally, this chapter looks at classical and contemporary models of leadership and considers the roles of communication in the leadership process. The authors first address planned change, in which organizations are confronted with conditions that suggest the current way of doing things are not effective, and thus they begin a purposeful process of change over time. This process is rarely simple, and there may be unintended consequences to planned change. This is because organizations are cultures and political systems inhabited by thinking and feeling human beings. Thus, it is critical to look at how employees might react to and influence the change process. Table 10.1 shows common problems that can be identified in the change process. The authors boil these problems down into three themes. The first theme is management taking ownership over the change. When senior management is not seen as backing the change effort, or when senior management's vision is not effectively shared with others in the organization, it is unlikely that a change effort will be successful. The next is resistance to change, which can be caused by ignorance of the change initiative, inadequate training, or fear. The third is uncertainty on the part of the organization. Uncertainty about what is happening in a change process is known to cause heightened anxiety. One study found that employees preferred having negative information about change to having none at all. All three of these reactions point to the importance of communication in the organizational change process. Decisions about communication are important when change is about to occur. For example, companies need to decide how much communication should take place in face-to-face meetings and how much can be accomplished through written directives or over the internet. Table 10.2 considers some specific strategies that management can use during the implementation process. These are all strategies that companies can use to communicate during times of change, but some are more effective than others. Researchers believe that the underscore and explore strategy is the most effective, while tell and sell and identify and reply are seen as moderately effective. Withhold and uphold and spray and pray are the least effective strategies. After covering planned changes and their corresponding strategies, the authors transition to unplanned change, or organizational crisis. Unplanned change can be divided into categories such as natural disasters, financial crises, terrorism, industrial accidents, and outbreaks of illness. Most scholars break a crisis down into three stages: pre-crisis, crisis, and post-crisis. Pre-crisis can be further broken down into signal detection, prevention, and crisis preparation phases. The crisis phase can be expanded to recognize a trigger and crisis containment. The post-crisis phase is broken down into determining responsibility, communicating with stakeholders, and establishing systems to cope in the future. Throughout each stage of a crisis, communication processes play a key role in coping with changes. Further, communication must address external stakeholders, such as customers, regulators, and the general public, and internal stakeholders, such as employees. In the Mandarin language, the symbol for crisis is two characters that are typically interpreted as dangerous opportunity. This is absolutely true in the case of organizations. A crisis is dangerous and threatening in many ways, but it also provides opportunity to both address the crisis at hand and reshape perceptions through communication. Thus, the importance of leadership during times of change, whether planned or unplanned, cannot be overstated. Next in this chapter, different models of leadership are considered. First, we look at trait theories, which assert that common traits are associated with leadership. The most common of these are intelligence, self-confidence, determination, integrity, and sociability. Next, we consider style theories, the idea that leaders have particular behavior styles that make them more or less effective leaders. A well-known example of this is Blake and Muton's managerial grid, in which the most effective leaders have the most concern for people and the most concern for results. Although there's a lot to say about trait and style approaches to leadership, in recent years they've fallen out of favor. Many people are uncomfortable with the idea that a set of features defines all leaders. A more recent theory of leadership is contingency theory, which emphasizes the match of styles of the leader to the characteristics of the situation. But even this theory doesn't capture the whole picture and still emphasizes traits and styles. Perhaps our best theory is that of transformational leadership, which draws a distinction between transactional leaders and transformational leaders. Transactional leaders have a relationship with their followers that is based around some sort of exchange. On the other hand, transformational leaders, through communication processes, create a relationship between leaders and followers that helps followers reach their full potential and can transform both the leader and the follower. In closing of the chapter, communication is described as the medium through which leadership takes place. Table 10.3 shows the various tools that can be used to frame a message and create more effective leadership. This takes us to the concept of discursive leadership. The idea that leadership is accomplished through interaction with others is a process of meaning management and is grounded in the accomplishment of tasks. Using the tool of communication to influence others, with a consideration of the ways in which leading is constructed through the discourse of a dispersed group of actors in an organizational context. The first additional reading this week is Choosing Strategies for Change. Just as in Chapter 10, this article highlights the accelerated rate of change that occurs in organizations today. In the article, the authors first describe various reasons for resistance to change, then outline strategies for implementing change in an organization. The four most common reasons people resist change are: Number 1, out of desire not to lose something of value. 2, misunderstanding a change and its implications. 3, belief that a change does not make sense for an organization. And 4, low tolerance for change. In Chapter 10, resistance to change is listed as one of the 3 major themes that hinder change. If we compare Table 10.1 to Kotter's 4 main reasons for resistance, we can see that many of the typical problems identified during the change process relate to Kotter's list. For example, inconsistent action by key managers, lack of management support, poor communication, and unclear purpose all contribute to resistance due to misunderstanding a change. You could argue that each of the problems from Table 10.1 are related to Kotter's list. After laying out the causes for resistance, the authors give a number of strategies for dealing with resistance. These strategies are education and communication, participation and involvement, facilitation and support, negotiation and agreement, manipulation and co-optation, and explicit and implicit coercion. Successful organizational change is always characterized by the application of these approaches, often in different combinations. Depending on the timeline by which the change has to occur, different strategies can be used. For example, if an organization has a lot of time to make a change, they should focus on using approaches 1 through 4, which are safe but take longer. If the change needs to happen rapidly, the organization may need to resort to options 5 and 6, which can work quickly but are also risky. These strategies also correspond to concepts from the text. Table 10.2 gives us a variety of approaches to communication, participation, and facilitation within the change process.